You ever have one of those moments where the world just tilts? That was me, standing in my childhood bedroom, staring at an empty safe. The room still smelled like the vanilla air freshener my mom insisted on using since I was 13. Nothing had changed except everything that mattered. The shoeboxes I'd stacked neatly were still in place. The little beige safe behind them sat there like always. I hadn't touched it since I moved back home 6 weeks ago, but something pulled me to check. Instinct? Anxiety? Doesn't matter. I entered the code. Same beep. Turned the handle. Empty. No cash. No documents. Not even the emergency gift cards I tucked in the back pocket like a backup for the backup. I stared into that metal box for a full minute, like the money would just blink back into existence. It didn't. And that's when I heard the footsteps. My dad stood in the doorway with a coffee mug like he'd just come in from watering the lawn. No urgency. No shame. Just smug serenity. "We had a vote," he said casually, like he was talking about what movie to watch. My brain short-circuited. "What? You've been living here rent-free for almost 2 months, Alex. You're not contributing. Meanwhile, your brother has a future to think about." We agreed it was best to use the money for his tuition. He said it with a smile. My mouth went dry. I couldn't speak for a second. My hands were shaking. I'd saved that money over the last decade, every freelance gig, every consulting hour, every sacrifice when I skipped dinner to meet rent. That money was my safety net, my never-again fund, and they drained it without even a conversation. "I'll be calling a lawyer," I said quietly. He took a sip of coffee and smirked. "Then you won't mind what happens next," he actually laughed. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was spinning too fast for that. By sunrise, I was gone. I left a note on my pillow, but not for them. Just a reminder to myself. They showed you who they are. Believe them. I drove north. Hours passed. Trees blurred. My phone vibrated nonstop in the passenger seat. 37 missed calls. My mom. My dad. My brother, Josh. I didn't answer. By the time I crossed into Vermont, I'd already made the calls that mattered. My lawyer. A contact in family law. An old friend who owed me a favor. And one more to Uncle Nick. He picked up on the second ring. "So?" he said. "No hello. They finally pulled that stunt?" "Yeah, good. It's time they learned what you're really capable of." Uncle Nick's cabin wasn't some cozy postcard from a vacation brochure. It was a fortress in the woods, 2 stories of pine, concrete, and independence. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, just peace. He built it himself after leaving Wall Street. Said he got tired of pretending. That morning, we ate breakfast on the back porch: eggs, sausage, black coffee, and mismatched mugs. I told him everything. From the fake family vote to the casual theft to the way my brother hugged me at the reunion like he knew what was coming. Nick didn't say much. He just lit a cigarette and let me speak. Then he asked, "You still have Grandpa's trust docs?" I nodded. "In my bag." Nick went inside and came back with a dusty folder. Inside were old receipts, scanned IOUs, a stack of yellowed documents, and one in particular, a handwritten note from my dad, dated 2015. It was an acknowledgement of debt. 18 grand borrowed from Uncle Nick, never repaid. "Your dad's been using people for years," he said. "Always promising, always delaying. He thought I forgot. I didn't." I stared at the paper. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was a pattern. That night, I made 3 moves. Sent a legal request to freeze disbursements from Grandpa's trust. The clause protecting me from family financial manipulation, that got triggered the second they touched my safe. Emailed a quiet, meticulous forensic accountant, someone who knew how to find what others tried to hide. Logged into an old shell company I'd created during my startup days, JC Solutions, an LLC under my brother's initials, just for a joke. But it had a bank account, one they didn't know I still had access to. I wasn't just going to get my money back. I was going to make them wish they'd never touched it in the first place. The next morning, the fallout began. I was chopping wood when my phone buzzed again. Josh. 6 missed calls, then texts. "I swear I didn't know. Why are you doing this? Please don't ruin everything." Then Mom, "This is tearing the family apart. Please stop. We can fix this." And Dad, in all caps, YOUV, gone too far. I didn't reply, because they hadn't seen far yet. They were still on the surface. I was already underwater. Later that day, Nick handed me a VHS tape from a shoebox he hadn't opened in years. The label said, 2003, Campfire Reunion. We played it after dinner. There was my dad, beer in hand, leaning against a log, laughing too loudly. He was talking to my uncles about financial flexibility and how you can always shuffle money around if you're clever. Then he said something that made my stomach turn. Hell, I could take from my own kids' account if I wanted. They'd never even know. The camera shook with laughter. I didn't. Nick just looked at me, dead calm. You ready to make it really hurt? I was. And this time, it wasn't about money anymore. It was about never being treated like a disposable piece in someone else's game again. I didn't respond to any of their calls. I didn't need to, because the storm had already started and they didn't even realize where it was coming from yet. They thought I'd sulk, maybe complain, and eventually let it go. They didn't expect I had legal leverage, documented proof, and someone like Uncle Nick in my corner who had been quietly keeping receipts for years. What they really didn't expect was that I had been preparing for something like this without even knowing it. And now that it was happening, every piece of the puzzle was sliding into place with terrifying precision. The trust was the first domino. Grandpa's trust had always been one of those family relics that no one talked about, unless it was to argue over what belonged to who. But he was smart. He knew this family would turn on itself the second money got involved. So he put in a clause, just for me. A clause that triggered automatic legal review if any funds earmarked for me were tampered with or redirected by relatives. The safe money had technically never been a part of the trust, but the moment they touched it and called it a family decision, they tied that theft directly to my name and that clause. My lawyer flagged the breach and filed an inquiry. And just like that, the entire trust became subject to legal scrutiny. 2 days later, I got confirmation that a forensic audit had begun. Every asset my parents thought they had quietly absorbed from the SUV they leased in Grandpa's name after he passed, to the investment property they'd been renting out behind the family's back, was now being dissected. Not because I asked them to, because they activated it themselves by getting greedy. I didn't even have to argue. I just gave the system a flashlight and pointed toward the darkness. While that unfolded, I moved on to Tyler's Sorry Josh, my brother, the golden boy, the one they stole my money for because he had a future. He was at that expensive school in Massachusetts, the kind with too many hyphens in its name and not enough graduates with real jobs. And he was only there because my parents lied on his financial aid application. I had the proof. When I went digging into the shell company I set up years ago as a business joke, I found something I never expected. Several small deposits, just under the reporting threshold, made from my mom's bank account into the LLC's holding account. All of them labeled vague things like school prep and Josh aid. They weren't just hiding money, they were fabricating independence to maximize Josh's eligibility for aid and scholarships. They stole from me, then moved the money around using my old company as a laundering front to make Josh look less dependent than he was. I gathered everything. Screenshots, statement copies, transfer logs. It was all there. Then I made 2 anonymous reports, one to the college's financial office and the other to the Department of Education. Within 48 hours, Josh's financial aid was frozen. All of it. His tuition account was locked, his dorm access revoked, and a formal investigation was launched. He called me in a panic, said he had no idea what was going on, begged me to believe he hadn't taken anything. But he had stood there that night at the reunion, hugged me like he was sorry without saying why, then let it happen. So, no, I didn't feel bad, and I didn't answer. While they scrambled to explain that, Uncle Nick pulled out the old loan document from 2015, the one where my dad had borrowed $18 from him and never paid it back. We updated it with interest, filed it formally, and issued a collection notice. Then we took the next step. We placed a lien on the house. Not the old house. The new one, the one my parents bought after Dad's promotion, the one they were trying to sell to downsize and move somewhere sunny. That house was now locked down. Couldn't be sold, couldn't be refinanced, couldn't be used as collateral for anything. Legally, it was frozen in time. I didn't say a word, just waited. 3 days later, I drove by the house. The moving truck they'd scheduled was parked in the driveway, untouched. My dad was outside, pacing like a man being slowly crushed by invisible pressure. My mom was sitting on the porch, hands covering her face. Josh was leaning on the car, staring at nothing. The same SUV they claimed was a graduation gift, except the plates were in his name, and the financing had been filed as an educational expense. I knew because I found the paperwork. I took all of it and filed another tip, this time with the IRS. Unreported assets, grant fraud, misused educational funds. I even included a few screen grabs from the car's registration history, cross-referenced with public grant documentation. I didn't need them to believe me, I just needed them to look. The audit was triggered 5 days later. And just when I thought I'd done enough, I remembered the campfire tape. The VHS footage of my dad drunkenly bragging in 2003 about being able to steal from his own kids without getting caught. I converted the video into a clean digital clip and sent it to my lawyer. But I also sent a USB version to my mom anonymously. 3 days after that, she called me sobbing, not apologizing, begging. She said everything was falling apart, that the family was collapsing, that I had to stop. I didn't answer. I played the voicemail on speaker while Uncle Nick brewed coffee like it was just another Tuesday morning. He listened to the end, then said without blinking, "We're not done, not until it really hurts." That's when it shifted. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about removing the illusion of safety they had always relied on. My parents had built a castle on lies and manipulation. I was just showing the cracks. I took everything I had, legal proof, documents, screenshots, bank statements, and forwarded them to a regional blog in New Haven that ran stories about local corruption and scandal. Not some gossip site, a real investigative blog with teeth. I included the whole story anonymously: the family betrayal, the stolen trust money, the legal documentation, the financial aid fraud, the VHS tape. I gave them the whole truth, and they ran it. Headline: Connecticut family accused of financial fraud, trust abuse, and college aid manipulation. Within hours, it was trending locally. Within 2 days, it hit Reddit. The comments went wild. People linked public records, found my dad's old workplace profile, started compiling pieces of the puzzle. Turns out, people love a real-life soap opera, especially when the villain wears khakis and talks about financial responsibility at neighborhood barbecues. By the end of the week, my dad was suspended from his job pending internal review. And then came the news van, parked in front of their house, cameras rolling. A reporter knocking on the door while my mom peeked through the blinds, praying they'd go away. Josh texted me the same day. 3 words: "Why are you doing this?" I didn't respond, because the answer wasn't a sentence. It was everything that came before, and everything that was still coming. The article was just the start. After it dropped, nothing felt real anymore, at least not to them. For me, it felt like clarity. Everything they built had been hollow for years, and now everyone else could see inside. But it wasn't just the internet dragging them, it was the consequences. Real ones. The ones that can't be deleted or spun or drowned in excuses. I heard from an old neighbor that someone at the country club approached my mom and asked if it was true, if she and my dad had really stolen their son's inheritance. She apparently dropped her wine glass right there on the patio and didn't say a word. My dad, on the other hand, was still clinging to whatever scrap of control he thought he had left. 3 days after the story went viral, Uncle Nick got a call from an old friend who still worked at the probate office. My dad had filed a petition, a bold one. He was claiming Grandpa's trust had been mismanaged, that the will needed to be reevaluated for irregularities. It was a desperate move, a final lunge at the controls while the ship was already halfway underwater. Nick just laughed when he read it. He said, "Let him try. He has no idea what we're still sitting on." And he was right, because I hadn't even used the Thanksgiving footage yet. It was another old VHS tape from 2007. The kind of thing you'd forget existed unless someone like Nick had it labeled and stored in a fireproof box. It was a quiet dinner that year, just our family and one of my uncles, nothing fancy. But the camera had caught a moment nobody remembered until I watched it. My dad was leaned back in his chair, talking low, and he didn't realize the camera was still rolling. He was bragging about taking side payments from clients, cash only, no paperwork, And then he said something I never forgot, that it was easy to move that money through his kids' names to keep it hidden. That one time, he even opened a savings account in my name that I never knew about. I sat there replaying that sentence like it was a song stuck in my head. A savings account in my name that I never knew existed. And I wondered if I could find it, what else I'd find hiding under my name. So I filed a request. Nick's lawyer helped me get the paperwork together to request all account activity tied to my social from the last 20 years. Most of it came up clean expected stuff from old jobs and student loans, but then there it was. An inactive savings account opened in 2008 tied to my name, co-managed by my father's tax ID. The balance had been wiped clean years ago, but the transfers were still there. Almost $15,000 flowed through it in 2 years. All cash deposits, all immediately withdrawn within a week. He'd used my name as a filter, a pass-through, and probably assumed I'd never know or never care. But now, with that and the Thanksgiving footage, we had more than just family betrayal. We had financial crimes on record. We sent the full tape and all the bank evidence to the same IRS contact handling the audit. But that wasn't the moment that broke my mom. What did it was the account we hadn't even looked into yet. The Tyler C. Investments account, the one that started as a joke LLC, I made during my startup phase and used for one invoice. I had gone into it expecting to see minor deposits. But when I cross-checked it against my mom's savings, something else surfaced. There were transfers going back over a year. Small amounts, $300 here, $150 there, each labeled with vague things like Josh Fund or Misc by expense. At first, it didn't register, but then the pattern formed. My mom had been quietly funneling her own money into the account under Josh's name to make it look like he was supporting himself financially, probably to maximize aid, get more grants, maybe even avoid scrutiny when his real expenses didn't match what the school expected. So I packaged all of it together. Every memo line, every timestamp transfer, every detail that showed this wasn't just a slip, it was a coordinated effort to deceive an entire financial system. I didn't even need to push it forward. Once the college got it, they moved fast. Josh's enrollment was canceled, not suspended. Canceled. He was flagged for fraud. His record was sealed pending formal review, and he was told not to return. That's when he showed up at Nick's cabin. I was sitting on the porch when I saw his car pull into the driveway. He looked thinner, hollow, like he hadn't slept in days. He stepped out slowly and didn't say anything at first. Just stood there like he was afraid the air would break if he moved too fast. I didn't say anything either. Eventually, he asked me if I hated him. I told him no, that I didn't hate him. I just didn't care anymore. He nodded. Then he said something that stuck. He told me Mom was sleeping in the guest room now, that Dad had stopped talking altogether, that an IRS notice had arrived that morning and Mom had started applying for jobs. He said the only reason they hadn't fallen apart completely yet was because she was still pretending they could fix it. Then he handed me an envelope, said he found it in Dad's desk, told me I needed to read it. Inside was a typed letter, dated 2009. It was addressed to Grandpa, a confession. My dad had borrowed $2,500 from him, promising to pay it back within 5 years. He never did. The letter ended with a single line that made my chest tighten. If you tell Alex or Nick, it'll destroy what's left of this family. And that was it. The whole thing boiled down to this obsession with control and secrecy and fear. It wasn't about needing the money. It was about having the power to take it without consequences. Josh didn't cry, didn't ask me to stop, just said, I didn't know what they were doing. I swear. And he left. That night, Nick looked at the letter, set it on the table and said, Your dad's not just a thief. He's a coward. Then he smirked. You want to finish this? I've got one more card to play. I didn't even ask what it was. I just nodded. Because this wasn't revenge anymore. This was cleaning the rot out of a house they built on lies. And for the first time, it didn't feel like vengeance. It felt like closure knocking at the door. Nick didn't waste time after I said yes. He picked up his phone, made one call, and gave a name to someone I'd never heard before. Then he poured himself a coffee and said, We had some work to do. I knew better than to ask questions too soon. I trusted Nick more than anyone at that point. And whatever final card he had, I could tell it was the kind you save for when the rest of the table was already folding. While he handled that, I went back to the part I couldn't let go of finding where the rest of my money went. Because while I'd started this foreclosure, there was still one part missing. I hadn't actually gotten my money back. They returned $18,000, sure, but something about the timing and the precision felt off. Too clean. Like they hadn't just scraped it together at the last minute. They knew where it was the whole time. That meant the money had been sitting somewhere. Quiet. Safe. Hidden. I started digging again. Not through their house or their emails. I didn't have access to those, but through something better. Financial trails they didn't think I'd ever follow. I requested a duplicate summary of all known accounts under my name and any affiliated third-party custodians. Then I looked through every joint record they had ever filed for college aid, tax grants, or anything that touched my brother's application. One name came up again and again, a bank I didn't recognize. Located in a small town in New Jersey, the kind of place you don't think twice about unless you're hiding something. I pulled the routing number and traced it back to an old branch where my dad had briefly worked before his last promotion. It wasn't a place with digital ease or online transparency. It was quiet, low profile, the kind of institution people with old habits used when they didn't want to be found. So I called the branch. I said I was Josh, claimed I'd lost access to my account. They asked for verification birth date, social, address history. I had it all. I'd helped him write college applications. I knew his passwords better than he did. A few polite lies and a security question later, I was in. And there it was. A dormant holding account titled Education Disbursement Reserve. Current balance, $426.88. The number stopped me cold. That wasn't financial aid. That wasn't scholarship money. It was mine. Traced back to a withdrawal from a bank envelope matching my original safe balance. Somehow, they'd transferred the money under a disguised designation, parked it in a hidden account under Josh's name, and labeled it as backup for unexpected college costs. A safety net, they probably told themselves, just in case tuition went up, just in case housing changed. But it was never theirs to move. It wasn't aid. It wasn't theirs. It was mine, filtered through deceit and locked away like I'd never need it. I took screenshots. Full transaction logs documented everything. Then I contacted Nick's lawyer and filed a formal claim for restitution. The claim wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about conversion, misappropriation, and breach of fiduciary trust tied back to Grandpa's estate. But we knew it would take time. Legal action crawls when it's complicated, and they had just enough gray areas to buy themselves delays. So I made a choice. A simpler, more direct move. One they'd never expect. I showed up at their house. No warning, no text. Just walked up to the front door and knocked. My mom opened it. She looked thinner, exhausted. Like the last 2 months had stripped all the self-assured polish she used to wear like armor. She blinked when she saw me, unsure if she should hug me or shut the door. I asked if Dad was home. She hesitated, then called for him. He came out slowly, arms crossed, jaw clenched, not angry, just afraid to look like it. He didn't say a word. I told him I knew about the account, told him the balance, the name, the origin. I told him I could take it to civil court and charge him not just with theft, but with fraudulent concealment and conversion of estate-linked funds. I told him if he refused, I would forward every document, every clip, every audit line to the DA's office. That I would add the VHS footage for flavor. That the trust was already preparing an asset forfeiture review, and anything they hadn't declared would become subject to state seizure. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I just let the silence carry the weight. He didn't respond. He just stared at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. I turned and walked away. 2 days later, I got a notification from my bank. Incoming wire transfer, $18,000 exactly. No note, no subject line, just numbers. It was the fastest thing my father had ever done. But I wasn't satisfied because I knew he didn't send it out of guilt. He sent it because he was scared of what was next. And Nick? He wasn't finished yet. That night, around 2:00 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. One line, "He's going to post about you." I didn't even know what that meant until 2 hours later, when someone I hadn't spoken to in 10 years messaged me a link, a post, on Reddit, an anonymous account, but the writing was unmistakable. It was a parenting subreddit, and the title said it all. My son stole our lives and is trying to ruin us. Parents, beware. It was a full-on meltdown. A sad, angry, delusional rant accusing me of being ungrateful, manipulative, mentally unstable, and violent. Said I refused to work. Said I took advantage of their generosity. Claimed I hacked financial records and was brainwashed by a bitter uncle with a grudge. I laughed out loud when I read that part. Nick would have been proud. The post tried to twist everything, called Josh a victim of a smear campaign. Said I was burning the family name for likes. It ended with a desperate line that almost sounded like a cry for help. If anyone knows how to stop an adult child from destroying your legacy, please DM me. He wanted sympathy, validation. He got none, because Reddit did what Reddit always does when the truth is already out there. They dragged him. Users dug up the news story, linked screenshots, reshared audit results, and exposed every contradiction in his narrative. Within 12 hours, the post was deleted, the account gone. But I saved it all, just in case. Because even when you're winning, you keep your receipts. That was the moment I knew I was done playing defense. I didn't want their house. I didn't want their apology. I didn't want their chaos orbiting my life like a dying planet. So I took the last step. I legally changed my last name. A clean break, no fanfare, no announcement. Just a signature and a form at the county clerk's office. When I walked out, it felt like shedding a skin I didn't ask to wear. I moved into a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood 3 hours from the wreckage. It wasn't fancy, just clean, peaceful, mine. A corner unit with big windows, a creaky radiator, and a fire escape that looked out on old trees. I bought a used couch, a set of secondhand speakers, and one record I played for days, just letting it fill the space that used to ache. I didn't leave them my number. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I blocked every contact linked to the house. The only thing I left behind was a document, password locked on my laptop, titled, "In case I ever forget." Inside it said one line, "You taught me how to fight. You just forgot I was listening." I thought that would be the end of it. I thought changing my name, leaving the town, cutting the cord completely would mark the last page of this chapter. For the first time in what felt like years, I wasn't walking through life carrying a quiet weight. The new apartment was small, but every inch of it felt earned. There were no voices telling me I owed anyone anything. No guilt tucked between my ribs. Just soft mornings and the hum of silence I chose. Uncle Nick came by once every week or two. Sometimes with groceries. Sometimes just to sit on the fire escape and share a beer. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just listened to the wind against the glass. And sometimes that said more than any of the words we'd worn out. But if I've learned anything, it's that peace is never final, not when your past still has one more loose thread dangling in the dark. It started with an envelope. No return address. Just my new name typed on the front like a stranger trying too hard not to be recognized. I almost didn't open it, but something told me not to ignore it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an old court document, one I'd never seen before, a beneficiary designation form from my grandfather's trust. Not unusual, but in the margin, scribbled in blue ink, was a note that stopped my breath mid-inhale. It read, "If anything happens to me, Alex is the one to protect. The rest can fight. He's the one who'll need armor." The handwriting was shaky but familiar. Grandpa. A line I'd never seen. Not part of any official will, but a note he'd scrawled on the side of a document filed years ago. I didn't know who sent it. I still don't. But someone out there had been watching, and they wanted me to know Grandpa saw it all coming. I showed Nick. He stared at it for a long time, his thumb brushing the edge like it might smudge if he blinked. Then he said, "He knew. Even back then, he knew how your dad was. He just didn't want to destroy the family to prove it." I asked him what had changed. He said, "Nothing and everything." Because legally, it wasn't binding. Emotionally, though, it felt like a map backward, a confirmation that I hadn't been paranoid, that the boy who always felt like a spare part wasn't imagining it. That the favoritism, the financial sabotage, the guilt tactics, they weren't flukes. They were part of a system I never signed up for but had to live inside. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I would, but I didn't. I just felt still, like the world had finally stopped spinning crooked under my feet. 2 days later, I got a call I never expected. Not from my mom, not from Josh, from my father. The number was unfamiliar, probably borrowed. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a powerful thing when silence has been your shield for so long. I picked up, said nothing, just waited. He said my name, my new one, like he was testing it for weight. He asked if I'd gotten the letter. I said yes. Then he paused, like he was searching for a sentence that might sound like accountability. But all he managed was, "You really think I'm the villain, don't you?" I didn't respond, because I didn't need to. Silence is louder than argument. He started talking fast after that. Said they were losing the house. That mom was working part-time at a call center. That Josh was living with a friend in New York trying to rebuild his academic record. He said he couldn't go back to his job, that they'd quietly phased him out. No title, no statement, just gone. He said, I ruined everything, that I weaponized a family disagreement into a campaign of destruction. I waited until he ran out of air, then said, You stole from me. You taught them it was okay to steal from me. Then you called it a vote. He didn't deny it. He just said, We didn't think you'd do all this. I said, Exactly. Then I hung up. It was the last time I ever spoke to him. And the strange thing? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. Like carrying a bag you finally set down and realized your back had been screaming the whole time. After that, things got quiet again. The audit kept moving. The estate case stayed open. I didn't follow every update. Nick handled most of it. Every now and then, a letter would arrive. A formal notice about asset freezes. An update on trust redistributions. A reminder that the consequences hadn't stopped. They were just playing out in slow motion now. Karma on a timer. But I wasn't glued to it anymore, because something inside me had finally turned off. Not in a broken way, in a finished way, like a book you closed knowing you'd never reread it, even if it changed you. Then, one night in mid-October, I got a knock on my door. It was Josh. I hadn't seen him since the cabin. He looked older. Not broken, not angry, just different. Like the version of him I might have known if we'd both grown up in a home that didn't orbit around manipulation. I didn't invite him in, but I didn't close the door either. He stood there for a second, then said, I know I don't deserve to ask you anything. I nodded. That was true. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a small box. Inside was a flash drive. He said, I found this when I was cleaning out Mom's files. It's all the old tax stuff. Password protected, but I figured if anyone could open it, it's you. I asked why he was giving it to me. He said, because I think I finally understand why you did it. And I wish I had said something sooner. I didn't thank him. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because gratitude was a language we'd never spoken fluently, and I didn't want to fake it now. He walked away after that quietly. No hugs, no promises, just the kind of exit that felt like an apology without needing to say the word. I didn't open the flash drive right away. I left it on the counter, next to the coffee machine. I made a note to look through it eventually, but for now, I didn't want to. Not because I was afraid of what I'd find, but because I finally had the power to decide when. And that choice, that freedom, it was more valuable than any number on a bank statement. I didn't open the flash drive for a week. It sat untouched on the kitchen counter like a sleeping dog I wasn't sure I wanted to wake. Every morning I'd see it and think, not today. Not because I was afraid of the contents, but because I no longer needed answers to feel okay. I had already rebuilt the parts of me that mattered. But on the 7th day, I sat down at my laptop, plugged it in, and typed a password I didn't even know I remembered. My mom used it for everything: our dog's name and her birth year. She always thought changing an O to a 0 made her unhackable. The drive opened with a quiet hum. It wasn't flashy, just a folder named Tax Years with subfolders by date. I clicked through out of habit more than curiosity, but then I found a hidden folder at the bottom, not encrypted, just renamed to a string of numbers. Inside were PDFs, letters, copies of checks. One in particular caught my eye, dated 3 months after I moved in with them. It was a deposit slip for $18,000, and the signature line at the bottom wasn't mine, it was Dad's. The account listed matched the New Jersey one I had traced weeks earlier. This wasn't just my theory confirmed. It was proof. Paperwork that linked my safe directly to the bank account and removed every shadow of doubt. My name was nowhere on it. No one had even bothered to fake my approval. It was theft, clean and simple. And that realization didn't make me angry. It made me strangely calm. Like I had finally flipped the last page of a book I had been reading out loud just to prove I knew how it ended. I sent the file to Nick. His reply was short. "That's the nail." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. At that point, every thread of the lie was unraveling in public and private. The house was unsellable. Their names were flagged in 3 different audits. The trust had formally reassigned every future disbursement to me and Nick, citing risk of mismanagement. The estate lawyer we hired filed a motion to restrict their financial activity until resolution. But none of that felt like victory. It felt like sweeping ashes. Because revenge, even the poetic kind, doesn't restore what you lost. It just clears space for something else. And that's what I wanted now. Space. Room to breathe in a life that wasn't shaped by who wronged me. So I started building a different kind of plan. Not a retaliation. A future. I took on a contract job in the city just part-time, enough to keep me moving. I joined a climbing gym, mostly for the silence that comes between each pull of your body up the wall. I reconnected with a college friend who ran a small design agency. He needed help writing brand copy. I needed a project that didn't come with generational trauma. We made it work. I still had my savings, now fully recovered. I kept the apartment, upgraded the couch, started keeping fresh fruit in the fridge instead of takeout containers and old guilt. One evening, I was walking back from the market with a paper bag in each arm when I saw a woman standing on my stoop, mid-60s, shoulders pulled in, eyes scanning every window like she didn't know if she should be there. It was my mom. She looked smaller. Not sick, just reduced. Like someone who had been peeled down layer by layer until only the nerves were left. I stopped on the sidewalk and didn't say anything. She noticed me and smiled like we were strangers who'd met once at a train station. She said she wasn't here to make excuses. I said good, because I wasn't collecting them anymore. She nodded, and I could see her working up to something, trying not to fumble the one chance she probably rehearsed in her head 100 times. She said she found the letter Grandpa wrote, the one in the margins, about me being the one who needed armor. Said she hadn't seen it before, that she cried when she did. I didn't ask if the tears were for him or herself. She said Dad was gone now, not dead, just unreachable. Living with a cousin, refusing to take calls, slowly becoming the kind of man no one wanted to admit they knew. She said she still talks to Josh, that he's rebuilding slow but steady, trying to get into a different school. I said I was glad for him. She paused, then said the one thing I didn't expect, that she wasn't asking for forgiveness, just a little understanding, just enough grace to let her live with the truth without pretending anymore. I thought about it for a long moment, then said, I don't hate you, but I'm not walking back into the fire to prove it. She didn't cry, just nodded, like she'd been expecting that exact answer and still needed to hear it out loud. She left something behind on the step before she walked away. I didn't open it until that night. It was an old photo me, Josh, her, and Dad standing in the yard of the first house we ever lived in. Everyone was smiling, but only one person looked like they didn't believe they belonged there. Me. On the back, in her handwriting, it said, I see it now. I'm sorry I didn't back then. I put it in a drawer, not to forget it, but because closure doesn't need to be displayed. It just needs to exist. The next morning, I woke up and the world didn't feel different. But I did. And that was enough. Nick called later that week to tell me the trust redistribution was finalized. He said there was a little more money than expected. Some account Grandpa had left untouched for years. Enough for a down payment on something real if I wanted. I told him I'd think about it. Then we talked about nothing for a while. The weather, a new diner he liked, a joke about finally buying that motorcycle he used to threaten us with when we were kids. When the call ended, I sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee and let myself breathe. Not the shallow, guarded kind I used to do around people who might twist it into weakness. A real breath. Full. Quiet. Mine. And that's the thing no one tells you about walking away. You don't always feel triumphant. You feel clean. You feel still. You feel like your name is finally just yours again. No weight. No test. Just a thing you get to carry forward however you want. And when I looked out at the city below, with all its noise and motion and people I didn't have to explain myself to, I didn't think about what I'd lost. I thought about how long I'd been carrying what wasn't mine, and how good it felt to finally set it down. Story 2. I covered my sister's and her fiancé's rent. However, I discovered that they were making fun of me behind my back on that particular birthday. So I quit paying because I was cultured. They did so a month later. I was paying rent to my sister and her fiancé. Yes, you heard correctly. Pay the rent. They didn't even provide me a place to reside. In reverse, it was the opposite. I was paying them $800 a month to help with their mortgage and expenditures. About 3 years ago, it all began. Emma and her fiancé, Jared, were struggling financially at the moment. I could see they were too arrogant to seek assistance, and they were drowning in debt. I had recently started working as a high school teacher at the time. I wasn't married, but the income wasn't terrific. I assumed I could afford it because I had no children. After all, what are siblings for? I promised to support them until they were able to stand again. They were appreciative, or so I believed. However, the short-term agreement continued to drag on. 1 month stretched into 6, 6 into a year, and all of a sudden, 3 years of consistently sending money each month had passed. I centered my entire way of life around it. No large purchases, no holidays, just leading a thrifty lifestyle to stay afloat. I didn't complain, though. I was aware that I was acting morally. First family, always. Then came the news of the wedding. After all these years, they were finally getting married, and I realized that this was a pivotal moment. In my heart, I pray they inform me they no longer require my assistance. Instead, one day Emma called and asked if I could assist her with the costs of her wedding. I will always remember that call. I pondered for a long time before telling her no. I already give you $800 a month, Emma. That's all I can do, I said. She stopped talking. I'm not sure what she was expecting me to say, but I had to set a boundary. 2 months later, it's my father's birthday. We held a large family gathering at Grandma's place. It was the typical chaos, a ton of food, children rushing about, disputes over who had the best barbecue sauce. When Emma and Jared arrived, they appeared to be completely carefree. We were all having a great time, drinking drinks and reminiscing about old family tales. By the end of the evening, everything appeared to be as usual. My grandma approached me and put her hand on my arm. "Can we have a little conversation outdoors, Brian?" Quietly, she asked. I didn't give it much thought. Grandma has a reputation for being heart-to-heart. Sometimes it's simply a word of encouragement, and other times it's life guidance. I reasoned that she might be encouraging me to get married. She was continually asking when I will find a good girl and have children. It was quieter as we went out onto the porch. She checked her surroundings to make sure no one could hear her. Then she uttered something that was like a kick to my stomach. "You were ridiculed," she said softly. "Who?" I frowned as I asked. "Emma and Jared. They chuckle behind your back," I said. She said, "They believe you're stuck in life, that you're spending your time trying to assist them, and that you'll never have a family of your own. They make fun of how difficult it is to be a teacher and how much you have to give up living alone." A knot formed in my chest. I couldn't believe it. They viewed me this way since I had given up so much for them. Some sort of loser who deserves pity and ridicule. Silently, I listened to what she had to say. Grandma gave me a knowing, sorrowful look. She said, "You're a good man, Brian. However, you don't have to put up with this kind of treatment from them. They are using your kindness." Still in disbelief, I nodded. What was I meant to do with this knowledge? In front of everyone, confront them, sabotage the night? No way was I going to let them enjoy seeing me rattle. Rather, I returned indoors, forced a grin, and pretended nothing was amiss. Jared and I even exchanged glasses as we celebrated Dad's birthday. On the inside, however, everything was different. I understood that this was no longer how I could live. They believed me to be a joke. All right, when the money stops rolling in, we'll see how funny things get. I was determined not to lose my temper. I keep things elegant and play it smart. However, they were going to discover that I wasn't a softie. I woke up early the morning after Dad's birthday celebration, still reflecting on what Grandma had said. I was tempted to call Emma immediately and confront her, but I refrained. I needed time to reflect. Instead, I went through my usual routine coffee lesson plans, grading papers. As usual, a week or so later, Emma called me. "Brian, hello. I wanted to check in." Happily, as if nothing were wrong, she said, "Hey," I said in a neutral voice. She began talking endlessly about wedding preparations, guest lists, flowers, and a caterer issue. I listened to her for a bit. Then she mentioned money in passing. "Oh, and Jared was wondering if you could send this month's rent a little early. We have a few things coming up." I had to control my laughter. "Yes, regarding that. In fact, I'm going through some financial difficulties right now. I informed them that I would not be able to send the funds this month." A pause occurred. "Hold on, you only mean this month. Will you continue to assist us after that?" "Emma, I'm not sure. For the past 3 years, I have been assisting. I may have to spend some time concentrating on my own predicament." After a brief period of silence, I could hear her voice becoming more strained. "Are you serious, Brian? This money is crucial to us." "Yes, I was relying on my family to not make fun of me behind my back." There was another long silence. I didn't elaborate, and she didn't ask what I meant. Instead, she gave a stiff okay and quickly ended the call. That was the beginning of the fallout. 2 weeks passed. I didn't hear from Emma again, but I knew something was brewing. Then one night, my mom called me out of the blue. "Brian, I just talked to Emma," she began, and I could tell she wasn't happy. "She says you stopped helping her with her bills." "What's happening?" I sighed. "Mom, I've been sending them $800 a month for 3 years. It's not like I owe them anything. I have my own life to deal with." "Well, yeah, but they're family. And Emma said you've been acting distant." "Did she also mention that they've been making fun of me behind my back?" I shot back that. "Shut her up for a second. What are you talking about?" I told her what Grandma had said. For a moment, there was nothing but stunned silence on the other end. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer. "Brian, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You've done more for them than anyone could have expected. When they treat you like this, I understand why you're upset." It was a relief to hear her say that, but I knew things were about to get ugly. Sure enough, a few days later, Jared called me out of the blue. "Hey, Brian," he said, his tone forced and polite. "Emma's really upset. I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding, is that right?" I said, keeping my cool. "Yeah, man, I don't know where you're getting these ideas, but we've never said anything bad about you. You've been terrific to us." "Oh, so Granny just made that up?" I asked bluntly. Jared stammered for a second. "I look if she mentioned something. It was probably twisted. You know how old folks may exaggerate. I didn't buy it for a second." "You know what, Jared? Let's not pretend. I'm done with the money. You people are on your own. I hope the wedding goes smoothly." I hung up before he could argue. But the real kicker came a few days later when I got a call from Granny herself. "Come on over, Brian, honey. I want to show you something." "Curious," she said. I visited her residence. She gave me an old family photo album and ushered me into her study. I came across them while sorting through some stuff. She smiled slightly as she spoke. As I turned the pages, I came to a set of old pictures of Jared, Emma, and me as children. But suddenly, my eyes caught something surprising. In between the pages was a letter. It was dated nearly 20 years ago, before I was even born. "Grandma, what is this?" I took it out and asked. "Read it," she whispered. My late grandpa wrote a letter mentioning a hidden trust fund he had established for the equitable distribution of his grandkids. Grandma replied softly. "Emma and Jared are unaware of this unless one is discovered to be abusing the family bond. However, I believe you ought to." Stunned, I reclined. Money was no longer the only factor in this. This has to do with establishing limits. And after Grandma gave me the letter, I thought that perhaps, just possibly, karma was going to catch up with them. I had a lot on my mind. She did not specify the amount of money in the trust fund that my late grandpa had established for all of us. No one else in the family knew, she made plain. Not my parents, not Emma, nor Jared. "You told me this now, but why?" I questioned her. Grandma looked at me knowingly. "Because I want anything to make sense to you. It's not you who failed. They portray you as such. You have demonstrated more integrity than most people would ever have. Worked hard and made sacrifices for others. The purpose of this fund was to compensate individuals such as yourself. I gently nodded as I processed what she had said. It felt wonderful to know that I had some secret leverage, but I didn't want to jump into anything with this new knowledge. The drama intensified throughout the next week. I began to hear through the family grapevine that Emma and Jared were panicking. Cutting off their monthly money may have affected them more than I had anticipated. Jared's hours at work had been curtailed, and Emma was having problems paying some of the wedding providers. They began attempting to coerce other family members into giving them money, even though I felt they would survive. It had a disastrous backlash. I had been providing Emma and Jared with financial support for years, my mother told one of her sisters. As soon as word got out, Mia was well known across the family. It seems that Laura, who never holds back, ran into Emma at a family event that I wasn't even present at. You're acting like the victim after allowing Brian to cover your expenses for 3 years. Are you serious? She allegedly screamed. Later, Emma called me, enraged. Brian, what the devil? Did you inform everyone about the money? No, I responded coolly. All I said to Mom was that you caused this yourself. How humiliating is it, do you know? She gave a hiss. I believe that your issues are more serious than embarrassment, Emma. Maybe look in the mirror and ask yourself why you felt it was acceptable to treat me like a joke, I suggested. She had nothing to say. That should be the end of it, I thought. Jared, however, chose to intensify the situation. He must have been desperate because one afternoon he really showed up to my school without warning. In the parking lot, he was waiting for me. Brian, we must speak. He spoke in an attempt to seem composed, but his true feelings were obvious. What is it about? I crossed my arms and asked. Look, dude, Emma hasn't stopped weeping. People are starting to turn against us. He stated, we just want to put things right. Oh, you'd want to get things done now? I shook my head after they stole my money and laughed behind my back for 3 years. Jared, no thanks. I will no longer serve as your safety net. He blushed. You act as though we want to harm you. That wasn't the case. Then, Jared, how was it? I cut you off. Tell me how making fun of someone who has aided you isn't intended to do them harm. His response was unsatisfactory. Instead, he murmured something about how it was all a misunderstanding and rushed off. My father called me later that night. He seldom gets involved in drama, so I knew this was serious. I spoke with Emma and Jared for a long time, Brian stated. They regret how they treated you, but they're having a hard time right now. That's good. Flatly, I replied. But at this moment, I have no interest in making things better. They must solve their own issues. Dad let out a sigh. I'm not saying you're incorrect, you see. You've shown generosity beyond measure. However, it might be time to sit down and have a meaningful conversation with them. Make the air clear. I paused to reflect. I'll think about it. When I did say it, I wasn't feeling very forgiving. I had been used by them for years. I wasn't going to make it easy for them. They would have to demonstrate that they were worthy of another shot. About a week following my dad's call, I got an invitation. Strangely, it was handwritten. Emma sent it. She called it a family meeting and asked me to meet her and Jared at a coffee shop close to their home. I contemplated leaving, but my curiosity won out. I assumed I'd hear them out, even if I wasn't expecting much. When I got there, the cafe was nearly deserted. Jared and Emma were already there, appearing a bit overly prepared. Jared was fumbling with his phone while Emma was wearing her phony grin. Hello, I appreciate you coming. As I sat down, Emma remarked, Yes. What's going on here? I inquired. Keeping things brief, Emma inhaled deeply. Let's just say we're sorry. We ought not to have discussed you in that manner. We sincerely apologize, it was wrong. Jared nodded and chimed in. We were stressed out and made some bad jokes. None of it was intentional. Seriously, I took a seat back and looked them over. Everything seemed too contrived and too seamless. I responded, All right, but I had a question for you. Did you ever apologize if Grandma hadn't told me? They hesitated for a moment. Emma glanced at Jared, who spoke up right away. We would have eventually, of course. I laughed. Correct? Yes. As everyone shuffled uneasily, Emma revealed the true purpose of the gathering. We need a favor, Brian, she spoke slowly. It was there. I nearly burst out laughing. I'll guess. Do you require money? Not quite. Hesitantly, Emma replied. Please co-sign a loan for us. I gazed at her as though she had developed a second head. Are you serious? We're in a difficult time. Jared leaped in. All we need is assistance with the home's refinance. We can get a better rate and take care of the rest if you co-sign. There would be no cost to you. What I was hearing was unbelievable. You must be joking with me, I said. Do you really believe that after everything that has transpired, I will sign my name on a loan for you? Right now, are you even paying attention to yourselves? Emma's cheeks turned red. We're not attempting to exploit you. We're trying to make things right. I shook my head, not believing it. Requesting further freebies won't solve the problem. By accepting responsibility for your own life, you make things better. Jared smashed the table with his hand. Brian, you're being irrational. We are related. I gave a sour laugh. That's right. Furthermore, family members don't treat one another like trash. You're alone. After paying a few bucks for my coffee, I left without saying anything more. The unexpected surprise came a few days later. Grandma gave me a call, sounded shaky. You must come over immediately, Brian. It's crucial, she remarked. She gave me an envelope with my name on it when I got to her house. A letter from the bank regarding the trust money was enclosed. Apparently, Emma and Jared had somehow gone wind of it and were seeking to claim a greater portion, saying that I had concealed family assets. Grandma replied, her voice trembling with rage. They went to a lawyer. Even though you were unaware of the trust fund until lately, they claim that you concealed it from them. I was taken aback. You must be joking with me. Brian, they're desperate. You're grabbing at straws, she replied. However, even for them, this is low. Then it hit me. They were sinking, not just battling. And now they wanted to save themselves. Therefore, they were eager to put me under the bus. I'm not going to let them get away with this, I said strongly. They've gone too far. Grandma gave me a sad little grin. Excellent. They need to learn a lesson from someone. But I wasn't finished being taken by surprise. A lawyer for Emma and Jared called me the following morning. The lawyer seemed unexpectedly sorry, but I was prepared for a fierce struggle. He said, Mr. Daniels, I would like to inform you that my clients have chosen to drop their litigation. They want to resolve the issue in secret, retract their assertion. Why? There was an uneasy moment. Let's pretend that some fresh details about their financial status have surfaced. I believe they came to the realization that they couldn't legally pursue it. I kept wondering what had transpired later that day. Laura and Matt contacted me. It seems that Jared was let off from his employment after an unidentified source revealed that he had been embezzling modest sums of business funds. Even worse, the bank had flatly denied their loan application due to credit issues. Karma had dealt them a severe blow, and I had done nothing. I was still analyzing things a few days after the trust's claim disaster when Emma texted me. We must speak. Please. I paid her no attention. She unexpectedly came up at my residence the next day. When I got home from work, I saw her pacing outside my building. With a sigh, I exited the vehicle. Emma, what do you want? I inquired. I'm already tired. She seemed frustrated. Brian, I had no idea that Jared and the lawyer would get this far. I promised that I didn't want that to occur. He went into a panic. Fearful? Attempting to defraud me of that trust fund was totally acceptable to you both, I said. She didn't deny it as she glanced down at her feet. I apologize. All right. We've simply been under a lot of stress. The wedding is expensive. Everything is disintegrating. That's whose fault, don't you? I fired back. If you hadn't depended on me for so long, perhaps you wouldn't be in this predicament. With a grimace, she uttered something unexpected. You're correct. I have no one else to turn to, though. I gaped at her in shock. Do you not understand? I'm finished. I gave you thousands of cash and years of my life, and all you did was snicker behind my back. You come here now expecting me to save you once more. You're my brother, Brian. Silently, she said. Are we meant to watch out for one another? Yes. When you and Jared ridiculed me, what was that support? When you attempted to rob me. She had nothing to say. I gave a head shake. Emma, I'm finished. We won't be discussing money, trust funds, or anything else again after this. I don't want to interact with you and Jared anymore. Her gaze expanded. You can't simply stop talking to me like that. We are related. Observe me. She was left standing there as I entered. I didn't want to acknowledge how much it hurt, but enough was enough. Grandma gave me a call the next day. She had heard every word in our household. Nothing is long kept a secret. I want to tell you something, Brian. I said. She said, "I've made the decision to stop communicating with Emma and Jared. Not for a while, however." I was taken aback. "I don't need you to do that for me, Grandma." "Yes, I do," firmly, she said. "They attempted to betray you despite the fact that you have been nothing but kind to them. I am not respected if they are not respectful of you. I'm not going to act like they didn't cross the line." I couldn't express how much it meant to me to hear it from her. I received another surprise a few weeks later. Laura took me aside when I bumped into her at the supermarket store. "Hey, I heard about everything that happened," she remarked. "I just wanted to express my pride in you," she said. "Proud of me?" Confused, I asked. "Yes. At last you advocated for yourself. Emma always had a knack of manipulating people, but you didn't let her walk all over you." I gave a shrug. Although it wasn't simple, I had to stop living that way. "Well, you made the correct decision. You might want to check in with Grandma, by the way. I noticed that she is making some adjustments to the trust fund." "Modifications?" Laura smiled. "To put it mildly, Emma and Jared may not be part of the plans for the future. Grandma verified it when I went to see her a few days later. I spoke with the attorney. I've decided that Emma and Jared will not receive their share of the trust if they are unable to demonstrate responsibility and respect," she stated. "The trust will be split between you and your cousins if they don't change, but I'm giving them a chance." I was momentarily silent. "Grandma, you don't have to do that. None of the money is mine." "I understand," she smiled. "You deserve it because of this." After that, I cut off all communication with Emma and Jared. No texts, no calls. I stopped handling any family turmoil and banned their numbers. Things began to feel easier gradually. It wasn't until it was completely gone that I realized what a load I was carrying. The actual kicker. After losing his job, Jared moved out of the house, according to what I heard. Emma had to return to living with her mother because their relationship was in ruins. I couldn't help but notice the irony, even if I wasn't pleased about it. Story 3. When I sent them money to pay their bills, my parents laughed at me and called me a loser. I also stopped donating money after learning about it, and a month later at the family dinner, I always knew I wasn't their favorite. By the time I was 10, it was obvious that my older brother Mike was the best athlete. No wrong could be done by the golden child. Emily, my sister, excelled academically and consistently earned scholarships and straight A's. And then I wasn't particularly good at anything, but I wasn't horrible either. They didn't notice me. I was only present. I tried nonetheless. I put a lot of effort into my studies, took on odd jobs to pay for my education, and continued to work hard after I graduated. I never made any requests of them. Unlike my siblings, I was not allowed to pursue my interests or take chances. I had to work to make ends meet. I didn't think twice when they called me a few years ago to ask for assistance with the bills. I was barely making ends meet, but I continued to send them money each month, only until we're able to stand again. I believed them, they had claimed. I was forced to. It was challenging. I worked long hours at a job I didn't love, budgeted every penny, skipped things for myself so I could send what they needed. I thought I was doing the right thing, proving I wasn't the failure they always said I was. I wanted them to be proud of me for once. Then one afternoon, everything changed. I stopped by their house unannounced to drop off some groceries I picked up for them. As I approached the door, I heard laughter. It was loud, familiar, and unmistakably mine. Can you believe he still hasn't found anyone? How long does he think he can put this off? What's he waiting for? 30 years. My father joked he's probably afraid no one will want him, Mike chimed in. Why would they? Emily added, giggling. He's always so concerned about his work. But look at him, he's barely getting by. It's funny. I stood paralyzed on the porch while my mother spoke next. Well, at least he's good. For one thing, he pays our expenses. Can you imagine how desperate he must be to send us money? What a loser. The laughing became louder. I didn't even feel myself open the door. I was standing in the entryway, though. They instantly stopped laughing. Why is it so funny? I asked in a composed tone. When they spotted me, the room became quiet. When my mother laughed, her face froze. Mike and Emily exchanged fast, awkward looks, and my dad sat up taller. At first, nobody said anything. Why is it so funny? I looked directly at my mother as I asked again. Her attempt at a grin seemed strained. Oh, honey, it's nothing. We were only making jokes. We're like that, you know? Mike laughed. Yes, man, lighten up. It's not very profound. Not that deep, I said again. While I struggle and assist you in paying your debts, you sit here and laugh at me. And you find that amusing? My mother waved her hand dismissively, grinned, and vanished entirely. Don't take anything personally, please. You are aware of our gratitude for your efforts. Emily gave an eye roll. Seriously, are you making this a thing? That's not even how we've discussed you. I stood there looking at them all as nonchalantly as though it didn't matter. The things I'd given up so I could send them money, the nights I'd stayed up trying to stretch my income, the years of sacrifices I'd made for them, all of it made them giggle. They are grateful. I remarked, my voice steady. Did you label me a loser for that reason? Did you say I was desperate to donate money because of this? My father folded his arms and reclined in his chair. We were kidding. Don't pretend to be a saint. You are our child. Helping your parents is natural. Emily and Mike also pitched in. However, you don't witness them hurling stuff at us. That was a huge blow to me. They provided assistance. Glancing between Mike and Emily, I said. Emily grinned and shrugged. Yeah, we helped out here and there. I said it again. Yes, I have been paying your rent, utilities, and other bills for years. Tell me more about their assistance. What were they doing? Make a single grocery purchase. Mike gave an eye roll. You're quite theatrical. Do you believe that you are the only one who takes action? Please. Why didn't you simply refuse to help if you're so resentful about it? I recognized then that they didn't give a damn. Not at all. I was not appreciated by them. They didn't feel horrible about what they said to them. I was a handy ATM. I wasn't family. I inhaled deeply. You're correct. I ought to have declined. My mom woke up. Excellent. Therefore, let's put an end to this small show of sympathy and go on. We're almost done with dinner. No, I said. Years ago, I should have said no, and now I'm saying it. From here, you're on your own. They all four froze. My dad narrowed his eyes. What does that signify? It indicates that I'm finished, I said plainly. No more assistance, no more funds. Nothing. My mom laughed. You're acting absurdly. You can't simply cease lending a hand. That money has been essential to us. I know, I said. Isn't it the reason you're laughing? Since you were aware that I would never cease, regardless of how disrespectfully you treated me. Mike stood up and grabbed his keys. Man, whatever. This is dull. I have tasks to complete. Emily trailed after him. Yes. Likewise. Have fun with your small outburst. They both left without another word, leaving me alone with my parents. After a minute, my mother remarked, Don't be like this. Your household? Families. Assist one another. This is something you'll regret. I glanced at her and then at my dad. No, I won't. Enjoy your evening. Then, disregarding their cries behind me, I left. In years, for the first time. They didn't get any money from me. When the month arrived, I felt relieved instead than guilty, as I had anticipated. It felt as though I had at last removed a huge load that I had been lugging around pointlessly. I didn't answer my mother's first several calls. Then the texts arrived. Hey, did you send the money or did you forget? The bills are behind us. Can you mail it today? Is everything all right? Why do you not respond? None of them were answered by me. I had no desire to justify myself or be drawn into yet another guilt trip. Then my father began phoning. He didn't text very much. I was interested in hearing his thoughts, so I answered his phone when he phoned. How are you? He inquired. No. Hi there? Don't be kind. I said, I'm busy. The money wasn't sent by you? As though I hadn't paid a parking ticket, he replied. I know, I answered gently. A lengthy pause ensued. What does that signify? You've consistently sent it on schedule. I rely on it, as does your mother. You are aware of that. No more, I said. Are you serious? His voice rose as he asked. Stopping is not an option. How far behind will you be, do you know? Why are you treating us like this? Because I am sick of being treated like a piece of trash. I was direct. If I'm such a loser, then quit expecting me to take care of everything. After a little period of silence, he continued, We need to talk about this. Tomorrow, your mother would want to host a family supper. Are you coming? I desired to inform him. No, but Something in me was interested. Perhaps they would come to recognize their mistakes. Maybe they'd apologize. Alternatively, they may attempt to defend themselves against my better judgment. Yes, I replied. It was tense when I went to their place for supper the next day. Emily and Mike weren't present. This was not unexpected. When it wasn't about them, they never stayed. No one appeared hungry, even though my mom's favorite dish for family meals was lasagna. As my mother fiddled with her fork, my father sat at the head of the table with his arms folded. I sat down opposite them and bided my time. My mother then started. We wanted to discuss this financial predicament. There is nothing to discuss, I said. I've stopped sending. Avoid being obstinate. We are your parents, my dad remarked. We need your support and respect. I know nothing about you, I said. The look on my mother's face stiffened. Families don't operate like that. You are expected to assist. We have really benefited you. I arched an eyebrow. Such as? She blinked. You were reared by us. That's the very least of being a parent, I added. You receive no compensation for fulfilling your obligations. My dad pounded the table with his hand. Be mindful of your tone. You're behaving like a pampered child. You believe that by denying us money, you are punishing us? You're only demonstrating your self-centered error. I was struck by that, but not in the manner he meant. I had clarity in place of grief and rage. I chuckled quietly and serenely. A mistake. I'll make it simple for you if that's who I am. I will no longer be involved in your lives. Don't give me a call. Please refrain from texting me. Don't expect anything from me. My mom's eyes got big. That's not what you mean. Your family is us. No, I said, getting to my feet. A family does not laugh behind their backs at one member and treat them like an ATM. You've expressed your feelings for me rather clearly. And now I'm repaying the favor. My dad gestured at me with his finger. Don't come back if you leave by that door. I gave a nod. Excellent. That's the strategy. They were astonished when I left without saying anything further. I didn't see the consequences coming so soon, but leaving that diner felt definitive. My phone was overflowing with my mother's missed calls and texts by the time I arrived home. More desperate than the others. Return and speak with us. We uttered things we didn't mean. This is being exaggerated by you. I didn't respond. Mike texted me a couple of days later. You're really making a big deal out of nothing, Mike. Parents are furious. Me? Mike, it's not my problem. You are behaving like a kid. Adult up. I also disregarded him. At first, the stillness was difficult. Breaking it off was strange. It was as though an instinct I had been trained to follow vanished out of thin air. I've held the belief for years that family should always come first, regardless of what they called family. Now I recognized it for what it was. Manipulation in the guise of devotion. My mother called me once again a week later. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, quickly, she said. She spoke in a lighter tone than I had anticipated. We wanted to inform you that everything has been resolved. Don't worry about us. Mike and Emily will now assist with the expenses. I had an odd mix of relief and resentment. Good, I said. I knew the catch was coming, though, when she added, in order to keep us afloat until they figure things out, we were hoping you could at least bring us a small item. You know, just for this month. It nearly made me chuckle. Are you serious? You're still requesting money from me in spite of everything. Don't act that way, she urged. You're the only one we can depend on. No, I'm not, I said. Without my help, figure it out. I hung up before she could finish her sentence. After 2 weeks without communication, I was beginning to feel at last liberated. Then suddenly I received a call from an unidentified number. I answered it against my better judgment. Emily was the one. You're amazing, she said immediately. Are you aware of the harm you've caused? What are you discussing? Already irritated, I asked. Due to their inability to pay the rent, Mom and Dad are in a panic. She lost her temper. As much as we can, Mike and I have been lending a hand. You see, we're not made of money. What I was hearing was unbelievable. You've done your best to assist. Do you mean the few $100 you gave them after they had done nothing for years? You don't understand, she remarked in a condescending tone. Our parents are these. They need us now because they gave us everything. You don't simply leave them. I laughed a little dryly. Oh, You wish to assist them now? When I was the one carrying everything alone, what was that energy? She had nothing to say. Rather, you are self-centered, she continued. You've been self-centered all along. Selfish? The first said it again. While you and Mike did nothing, I sacrificed for her for years. I'm the self-centered one now that I'm finished. You're amazing. What do you know? She lost her temper. All right. Do as you please. Just don't come to us in tears after you've realized your error. I responded. Don't worry. I won't. I didn't hear from any of them again for a time after she hung up. Then it took place. One evening, while browsing social media, I came across Mike's account's tagged photo. The image was of him. In a restaurant, Emily, my parents, and a few of their friends are seated. Everybody was grinning. Drinks in hand, plates piled high. It said in the caption, "Red heart, family first, regardless." I felt sick to my stomach. My parents, who had been phoning and messaging me incessantly about how they couldn't pay the rent, were out enjoying an expensive supper. They appeared content, at ease, and even arrogant. Lisa, Mike's wife, had made a remark. "What a lovely family," Emily said. "I wish we could have been there. Next time. Tonight was so much fun." After all the recent tension, it was well worth it. For what seemed like an age, I gazed at the picture. My blood is boiling. My parents had pleaded with me for rescue, acting as though they were drowning. But here they were, eating out as if they didn't give a damn. I initially believed that they might have gone out after they had finally managed to organize their finances. However, I came across something that made my stomach churn as I read through the comments. Mike had received a letter from a buddy. "Again, thank you for supper," Mike said. "It's unbelievable that you picked up the tab." Man, of course. We're like that, you know. My mouth fell open. It seemed unbelievable to me. In addition to treating their friends to supper, Mike and Emily were pretending to be having financial difficulties in order to support our parents. The fact that I had likely funded many evenings like this over the years was the saddest part. How many times had I forgone meals to send money home while they joked over drinks? I wanted to forget about it. Yes, I did. However, something inside of me exploded. I required resolution. I gave my mother a call. The first ring was answered by her. Her tone was guarded right away. "Oh, hi, sweetheart. I didn't anticipate hearing from you." Mike's post caught my attention. I spoke directly to the point. A lengthy pause ensued. "Which post?" "The one where everyone is having a blast at a restaurant," I said. "You know, you're telling me that you're having problems making your rent payments." Her voice faltered. "Yes, we do." "It isn't what you believe." "Really?" "It looks precisely like what I believe it to be," so I inquired. "You've been lying to me for how long? How often have you gone out or indulged in such pleasures with the money I sent you?" "That isn't the case." "Quickly," she said. "We simply wanted a pleasant night out to unwind after all the stress we've been under recently." "You wouldn't comprehend," I responded. "You're correct. It's incomprehensible to me that you can tell me you're broke and then do this. You've been living off my sacrifices for years, so I don't see how you can call me selfish. Describe that." "Don't speak to me in that manner." She lost her temper. "We've taken care of everything. Perhaps you are the self-centered one if you wish to host a little supper over our heads." What I was hearing was unbelievable. "You took care of everything for me." "Really? Because all you've done, as far as I can see, is take. And you're stepping up now that I'm at last advocating for myself. Perhaps you ought to consider why nobody wants to be near you," coldly, she said. "You're resentful, unyielding, and hard to get along with. It makes sense why you are alone." That was it. I didn't shout. I refrained from arguing. I simply hung up. Her number was blocked by me. I then blocked Emily, Mike, and my dad. I had lost whatever connections I had. They didn't care about me. They didn't. I no longer gave a damn about them either. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I cut them off, and it was a long time before I heard from my family again. It was quiet. I didn't miss the incessant demands or the guilt. I felt like I had my own life for the first time. Naturally, though, they couldn't remain away indefinitely. I blocked them about a month later. There came a knock at my door. When I opened it, my mother was standing behind my father. He pushed past me into the home and said, "We need to talk." I moved ahead of him. "You won't be entering?" What are you looking for? Dramatically, my mother remarked. This is absurd. Your folks are where? Are you really going to treat us like this? After everything you've said and done, I fold my arms. Indeed, I am. What are you in need of? My father looked irritated but cut to the chase. Our mortgage is past due. We reasoned that Mike and Emily couldn't cover it. No, I cut you off. He blinked. No, what do you mean? No, I mean, I'm not helping you, I said. Ask Emily and Mike. Aren't they the favorites? Give it to them. They can't, as we've already stated. My mother's voice rose as she spoke. While they have their own lives and expenses, I do not. I fired back. While they did nothing, I've been dying myself for years to aid you. My existence was unimportant to you back then. Therefore, don't come here acting as though you care. You are now on your own. My dad gave me a scowl. Do you believe you're imparting knowledge to us? All you're doing is demonstrating your selfishness. I grinned. Excellent. Then, at last, we're in agreement. I closed the door and didn't look back. A few weeks later, they returned. It was only my mother this time. She seemed worn out and exhausted. I didn't fall for it, though. Please. Silently, she said. We're going to lose the house. I gave the head shake. I apologize, but I am unable to assist you. You're not assisting. Bitterly, she said. Whatever you want to call it, I said. However, I'm finished. After a lengthy minute of staring at me, she turned and left. I didn't see her or any of them again after that. I heard tidbits from common acquaintances over the course of several months. The bills were now being paid by Mike and Emily, but things weren't going well. I suppose that when you really need to cover everything, it's not that simple. Do I feel guilty? To be honest, no. The mess they helped create is finally being dealt with, and I'm free of it all. I've moved on. I even got to meet someone. Sarah is her name. She is intelligent, compassionate, and the first person who ever made me feel good about myself for who I am. To get her respect, I don't need to prove myself or go out of my way. She simply sees me as I am. She asked me the other day whether I ever considered making amends with my family. I told her the truth. I don't. I have made my decision, and they have made theirs. I don't know them or anyone else, and for once, I'm content. Anything. It's amusing. I was referred to as a loser by them. I feel like I've won, though.